So what's ownership of the W210 E230 been like for the last 2 years? Well, it's been a pretty good ride actually. Bought the car with 93,000 Ks, now showing 105,297 as the present moment, and it's been a pretty solid car. Needed a lot of work early on. The car had sat for the best part of 3 years unused as the previous owner was too old to drive it and couldn't drive it, and she bought it from brand new in 1997, and I had to sort of do a fair few things. So first owner bought this car new in July 1997. It's a May 97 build, 998 model year car, and the first owner drove it from new to 92,000 Ks, and she serviced it exclusively at Mercedes-Benz, although there was something interesting about that. And I got the car with 93,000 Ks, and she basically left it. She couldn't drive it anymore, and her daughter was selling the car, and I bought the car as is for $5,000 back in January 2020. So why W210 E-Class? Well, at the time, this was a very good example of one. It had only 92,500 kilometers. It was a reasonable car. It was very cheap for what it was. And I was after an old Mercedes because I was looking for something that was automatic, that fits my size 14 feet, and was comfortable for me to drive. And this was a car that I found for the price I was looking at. And it needed a bit of work because the car hadn't moved for a very long time. I was looking at S's, looking at other E's, and they all seemed to be either really ordinary or they're really expensive. And this one was a really good car for a really good price. And I figured, well, never had one of these. Let's take the plunge and find out. And I'm glad I did. 2 years later, it's been a great car. It's been reliable. It's been easy to maintain. It's been wonderful to drive. It's done lots of things in that time for me, and done a lot in terms of driving enjoyment. And I'm really happy to have it. Looking back now, I wouldn't have changed a thing. I'm very glad I have this car. I think I'll continue to have this for quite a while because I absolutely love this car. So, what did I need to do to this car before I roadied it in 2020? I had to get control arms, they'd had it, engine mounts, they'd all had it, even though the dealer allegedly said they did them, but that wasn't the case. I needed a water pump for this car. I needed to sort out the brake hoses, which proved to be a bit of a difficult thing to get. But other than that, after I've sorted the car out, it's been pretty good. Now, the M111 made it to the 5-speed box is a pretty reliable engine, and a reliable gearbox mated with it. So the things that have really bugged this car are not very big, they're minor issues, and I do believe that W210s, like this one, are a great classic car. If you want a good practical classic that you could daily drive, to a point obviously, then it's a good car. If you're daily driving in the city, I probably wouldn't say drive this every day, but if your daily commute involves highway miles, which mine did for a period of time, it's actually a very good car to have. And it drove, when I was studying in Adelaide, this car did a lot of highway miles and enjoyed passing everything from the smallest of Mitsubishi Mirages to other AMG Mercedes-Benzes, which was kind of funny because people in Adelaide drive really slowly and drive hunched over the steering wheel, and it's really funny passing them in a W210 with a 4-cylinder engine. The other thing that I noticed with this car was the way it felt from the minute I started driving this thing. Even in the state it was in, I knew it was a good car. I knew this was a car for me. Now, it also is a car set up for someone like me. 6 foot, size 14, in this big comfy chair, looking over the bonnet with a big 3-pointed star and a big steering wheel. It's perfect for someone like me to drive. If you're relatively short with tiny hands and tiny feet, this car does feel a little heavy, but not as heavy as any of the older Mercs, especially the car that it replaced, which was an old W126 380 SE. And this car, in front of that one, is a mile better. Then again, that one was quite an abused example. This one is a solid, pampered example that has been loved from the word go and will continue to be loved in my hands. This was the car I got as a sort of thank you from me to me for almost a decade of studying and getting into medical school. So this car really is, in many ways, a sort of a vehicle of all the effort I put in for so many years. However, One thing I do wish it had was a manual gearbox. I know I'm a loony, but I wish it was a manual. I know we never got manual W210s, but I really wish this was a manual. I'm a lunatic who likes manual cars. That sums me up. But this one as a car has been great. There's nothing I can really say bad about it. It does everything I could ever want from a car. It carries 5 in comfort. It carries loads of things in the boot. This has carried all manner of interesting things. Car parts, audio equipment, suitcases, anything I could possibly think of moving my life partially from Melbourne to Adelaide. This car did it. Anything this thing could carry, it's carried. Apart from the standard issue Mercedes-Benz dissidents in the boot, which it hasn't done yet. But it can do, if it can carry anything in the boot, like most saloon cars of this era could, it's fundamentally practical as a daily driver and as a family car. It's bigger than most SUVs. It's got more room in the boot than most SUVs. The only problem is you can't fold the seats down because in the back, the fuel tank is behind the rear passenger seat, which is why you can't fold them down. Other thing I had to get was a new mirror, which does squeak a little bit, as you can probably hear it. But for a daily driver, all up, this car could be daily driven for another 4, 5, 6 years and then put on historic registration. Well, it's already eligible for historics in Victoria, but in other states, 30 years old is when they go on to historics, and it'd still be reliable. It's a great car to own. It's not going to really do anything stupid to you. Look after it, it looks after you. It's only thing I do say is these things wouldn't handle 25, 30,000 Ks a year. I'd say keep it under 10 if you own one of these cars. I do about 5 or 6 on this car and 7 or 8 on my other car. And I do believe that this 210 is definitely a car for what I need it for. And again, people don't think, because it looks a bit like a bucket, the outside's missing a hubcap, some dings and dents. It looks like a bucket, it looks like a car a student would drive. It doesn't really exude rich asshole like my Audi A4 does, unfortunately. Someone who's in their early 20s, mid 20s, driving an A4 still annoys people. It's kind of funny. Not if you're trying to get a job though. It is kind of upsetting. You have to turn up in a car like this so people think you're not doing so well. But it's been a great car, and that's an interesting thing. Most of the older Euros, the ones people really buy are the complex ones with the V8s, the luxury cars, the big 7s and S's, and they become trouble over time because there's so much technology in them that eventually it's going to break. Whereas with this, because it's more or less a Stuttgart taxi, there isn't much in it. There isn't much to go wrong with it. It means you can run this as a budget classic car. And that's what I think many people should be doing. Buy cars that are old, that mean something to them, that they like, and run them as a sort of second car. Budget, classic car, get to enjoy it, can work on it, something they can look at every day and go, it's a nice car to have. And that's what this is to me.